Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Right Time, a Wave Sports and Entertainment original presented by Prize Picks. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Subscribe, like, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars, I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. I'm going to have to do my annual Rooney Rule spiel because y'all don't seem to understand after all these years of me trying to put y'all on game. But first, to our loyal listeners, we have launched an ad-free version of The Right Time. We're partnered with Supercast to bring you ad-free versions of every episode starting this week. For $5 a month, not only will you get ad-free versions of every episode, but it'll include bonus content like AMAs and special episodes you can only find on Supercast. To subscribe, make sure you go to righttime.supercast.com. We'll have links in the descriptions below on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And that's the stuff that we had written down. The stuff that I will say out loud is a lot of you go back with me. Some of you go back with me over 20 years. Some of you go back 15 with doing the audio stuff, whatever it is. The one thing you guys know is I've never really asked you for money, right? I've sold you shirts. I've done stuff like that. I've never asked you for money. And my general premise has always been, I got too much money to ask you for money. So if we're going to ask you to put $5 on something, it was very important to me and all the people involved that it be something that is worth your money. I refuse to allow anybody to squeeze my people just to get some cash out of them. So that's not what this is going to be. We got the $5 a month plan, and it is imperative to me that it be something that is worth your money. So I appreciate you for the support, and I think that you will find that what we are offering behind that paywall is something that is worth your money. So I encourage you to go and check that out. Sean, I'm a good dude, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, didn't you get the feeling when you was listening to that? You was just like, man, that's a good dude right there.
I got to send that to our folks at Supercast, who I was like, I'm just going to let Bo, read this script. He probably won't say anything on top of that. And, I think they'll give us a little extra little bump because that was great. I mean, that came from the heart, Bo.
That's right. And look, man, I mean, the one way you know if somebody's a good dude is if they tell you.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that's the clearest evidence in the world. He must be good. He came out here and said it himself.
Well, he sounds trustworthy,
Yes. What can I say? I got to be getting. And look, the life that I've lived recently, I'm incredibly skeptical of people who tell you all the time what a good dude they are. So I please hope you understand that I am joking here. Anyway, look at me putting on for 7 p.m. in Brooklyn, another Wave Sports and Entertainment original. I'm looking at myself in the screen. I can't figure out which way my hands are supposed to go to pick it up and show it to you. Anyway. Ain't I a good dude for putting on for the team?
We're going to play this in the next HR all-hands meeting of how to be a good employee,
That's right. That's right. It's bigger than me. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, we're going to talk about the Rooney Rule. I told you about that. But first, we had an interesting wild card weekend. I got one part I want to get to in particular. But before we get there, I'm going to run around to a couple of things. Thing number one I'm going to get to, and I've talked about this a little bit on Twitter, and I'm trying to figure out what we got to start calling Justin Herbert, because Justin Herbert has become that guy who is not as good as the sum of his talents, and he's in a tricky situation here, at least in terms of the ways that we perceive him about this, because he's got a coach that we have seen at just about every turn make quarterbacks good. The flip side of that is that Harbaugh's a little bit too loyal to his people, and he's got Greg Roman running that offense in the NFL. Ben done figured that part out, right? But if Harbaugh's your guy and you don't get it done, we're going to be inclined to think that the problem is you. So I'm trying to figure out. I saw somebody who meant to call him Herbert put in a typo, and they said instead of Herbert, it said Hebert. And so should we demote him to the level of Bobby Hebert from back in the day? Is he now Justin Hebert? Is he Justin Hebert, or do we give him a nickname like we give most people where you just shorten their name and so we just call him Herb?
Yeah, I saw you tweet the Herb thing, and I was like, that's actually the perfect way to describe that performance.
Yeah.
That was like a Herb-like performance,
Herb, didn't he cut his own hair or let his girl cut his hair? What was that story about? It was a real Herb-like behavior when it came to his haircut, as I recall.
Yeah, he had that long flowing kind of locks, and then he showed up to training camp or something, and he just had a really bad cut, like something you get in a dorm room.
Yeah. See, what's funny about that? That's a two American situation, and I've always wondered this. any place where black people are and they living in a place, somebody in the dorm cut hair. Somebody in the dorm been cutting theirs and they're 12 years old. I've always wondered if there was somebody in the dorm cutting white people's hair. And apparently, for what Sean has told me, yes, and you should leave him alone.
Yeah, they're cutting the hair. They're not cutting it well. They got their razor that they use for other things, and they're cutting the same hair with that.
Nah, you get high quality cuts, boy. My homeboy Andre in California. I ain't talked to Andre in too long. I need to fix that. But Andre used to cut hair in the dorm. Andre gave me the best haircut I ever got, man. Andre gave me a haircut, wasn't good, so good one time. I had to pull up on him on campus and tell him, hey, man, I've never gotten more compliments on my haircut before in my life. And now that I can't even really get haircuts, man, you know what I'm saying? I really look back fondly upon that situation. But anyway, we can decide. Like, maybe I need to find some place to put up a poll. Maybe we can do this on the Right Time account, Sean. Should we start calling Justin Herbert Justin A-Bear, or should we start calling him Herb? I don't really know, but I just thought that we should throw that out there as something to consider. I want to send a shout out to the Buffalo Bills because I think I've talked to you guys about this before. I'm nowhere near the place in my life to start considering that Bo Nix might actually be good. And so I appreciate them. After that first pass, it looked a little bit dicey, but not put me in a place where I had to like actually think about that anymore. Shout out to y'all. That is setting us up for Baltimore and Buffalo, which is going to be like Lakers Celtics in 1985. I said that on Twitter, and I thought that it was a pretty delightful reference that takes us back to back in the day. And Sean is so funny. So many people call me a racist while somehow getting the joke exactly.
Yeah, I was like, I saw some of the replies and I was like, I think they're leaning into exactly what you were talking about, but they didn't realize they were falling for the trap.
Right? It wasn't even a trap. Like, here's the thing about it. When the black people root for the black people and the white people root for the white people, it's not always racism. When the white people root against the black person, now we're talking about something completely different. Is there a measure of racism that is going to fuel some of the ways that people come from on this? Certainly, yes. That is going to happen. It's also going to make it a little bit more fun. Or as my homeboy put it, it's going to be like when Floyd get out there and fight one of them Mexicans.
Yeah,
it gets a little tense. It gets a little dicey, but it can also be a lot of fun.
I was meaning to send you this. I don't know if you saw it, but Samuel L. Jackson recently did an Instagram post wearing purple saying he's going to be rooting for the Ravens. And I know he's famously a Falcons fan, but it's like sometimes, you know, the lines of divide are very clear.
That's what it has been clear. It's been like, look, Josh Allen is that dude. I'm not saying he's not that dude. Y'all hear the way people be talking about him, though. Y'all know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. And now it's with the MVP situation. It's all in the air. Oh, my goodness. If they had just played for like slightly different teams, except, and I don't know how this is. Like, people also, Sean, came on my mentions and they was talking to me and they was saying stuff like, Buffalo has black people in it. You think I ain't never heard of Rick James? I know who Benny the Butcher is.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
People are like Griselda. I'm like, that is like the 0.0% of Buffalo.
No, but my point is, I know Buffalo got black people. That's not the point of the situation what we talk about. But them Buffalo fans, I tell you this right now, I ain't seen West Side Gun go through no table. I have not seen Conway the Machine come off the top rope like one of the Dudley boys. That I have not seen. That hashtag Bills Mafia, you know that's white people, because when black people compare themselves to a game, you call the goddamn police. When white people compare themselves to criminality, you make hashtags and t-shirts. And I know this because once everybody had to have a hashtag, Duke football was calling themselves hashtag Duke Gang. And I'm like, oh, so gang banging is cool, huh? Y'all the Crips of the prep school now? That's what we doing now? It's okay, right? So yes, you know damn well what I'm talking about when it comes down to that game. And again, it's so ironic because Josh Allen didn't truly become Josh Allen until they put that Jaheim in the playbook and he got out there and started running around. And then next thing you know, everything happened. Y'all need to be thanking me. That's right, because my Benetton brain spread it all the way out to places that y'all had never considered, and that's why y'all got a superstar at quarterback instead of what he had been before, a motherfucker throwing the ball like he had his eyes closed. Anyway, Green Bay Packers going home. Hey, man, that game made me think of two words. Jacked up! They was just out there from play number one. The Eagles was just jacking them boys up. I felt bad. I mean, everybody for the Packers just felt like they was getting hurt. They was dropping like flies. And even while the Packers was dropping like flies, the Eagles were not very good at scoring points. And I would be very, very concerned about what that team is going to give you. They did not. It would not make me feel good. I mean, they look terrifying in the ways where you had to hit people, but in the ways that you had to score.
All game, the broadcast kept talking about how the Eagles had the number 1 D, and then when it came to the offense, it was like a weird tone shift of like, we're not so sure.
And I ain't blaming it on Hurts. I ain't blaming it on nobody in particular. I'm just telling you, it ain't look so good over there. Shout out to Jayden Daniels. Way to get those guys. I mean, that kick at the end, boy, Washington out here, they just got some dude named Zane off the street to be their kicker. I don't know where they got him from, but it was a barely situation.
All the viral moments of him fixing his helmet 70,000 times. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. The position's already a bit neurotic, and then you get someone like that in there. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if it's the right combination.
Tough bag, man. Tough bag. But they went ahead and won that game. I'm going to be honest with you. By the time that game came around, I was so tired of football, and I ain't even really watch it, but I did see the kick. Jayden Daniels looked to be pretty good in the moments when I was watching. I do think that there's a point to be made, and people are figuring it out. Sean, you know what Baker Mayfield is? He's the real definition of mid.
Yep.
Mid is not the middle. Mid is mid. He's better than Reggie, but it ain't that funk.
It's like just right at good, but not good. Just right under it.
And I would also make the note that he is so much like mid that when you look at him, it looks like mid.
Yeah, he looks right. Yeah, exactly. He looks like mid. That's great. Yeah.
He look like mid. It actually gets you a little higher than you expected, right? Sometimes it let you down, though, right? You'd be like, damn, I just got some of this mid the other day. How come it ain't smoking like it did the last time I got it from you? But it's mid.
Yeah, other days you're like, wow, I can't believe I got this for this price. Like, what great value,
That's exactly what it is, right? Like it's a $40 eighth. that's what that is. Like, oh man, it's a little better than I thought you could get for $40. But that's where he's at. But the discussion I see people having a lot, and it's been going on for a little while, and it's one of those that you feel like people didn't really want to dip their toe into, but now after the game on Saturday, it feels like they're in a better situation to really kind of lean into it. And it's a question of whether or not it's time for the Steelers to move on from Mike Tomlin. Now, I'm going to say this right now. I don't think for a moment, for a second, that they moving on from Mike Tomlin this year. I don't think so. I think the noise would have to get so loud before they did that we would know it, or that it was coming, or that it was possible. And I don't feel like the noise has been loud enough. Now, when I start talking about the noise getting loud enough, typically the noise that I'm talking about that reaches that level of volume is noise that starts via back channel from the organization itself, right? That's when you start hearing sources are telling us that management is growing impatient with the lack of postseason success, yada, yada, that kind of thing, right? If I'm not mistaken, Sean, didn't they decide Mike Tomlin to an extension?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they locked him in, and I think he's a
June.
coach. He's a coach there for as long as he wants to be, regardless.
Right, he's there. Yeah, he's there at least through 2027. Now, let's also be clear that, Bill Belichick, I want to say, signed an extension right before they fired him, and he was probably making a lot more money than Mike Tomlin was. The Steelers also are just a little bit cheap, so I don't think they'd be in the business of paying him not to coach. So I don't think they're going to wind up making a change. I do think the question of whether or not they should make a change when it comes to him is fascinating. I think it is a really, really interesting discussion because the argument for firing Mike Tomlin it's the argument that got Marty Schottenheimer fired a lot of places, which is we are never going to be bad. Marty Schottenheimer in his entire coaching career had 2 losing seasons, okay? You were never going to be bad with Marty Schottenheimer as your coach. If I am not mistaken, Marty Schottenheimer's last game as an NFL coach was in January 2007 as coach of the San Diego Chargers, who went, I believe, 14-2 that season, the first season that Phillip Rivers was the starting quarterback. You may recall, by the way, that is the game where it looked like the Chargers had locked it up because the Patriots were driving, and then the Chargers made an interception that pretty much would have iced the game, and then the Chargers fumbled that interception. The Patriots got the ball, and then they went down the field and won. I couldn't remember if it was in overtime or not, but that is the chain of events that led to the Chargers losing that game. And Marty Schottenheimer got fired because A.J. Smith, the general manager, hated his guts. That's what it is, right? But nobody's putting Marty Schottenheimer in the Hall of Fame, largely because he didn't make a Super Bowl. Marty Schottenheimer was on the business end of some of the most demoralizing losses that one could think of. The John Elway drive in 1986, I believe. There was also another very similar drive in 1987. Like, Schottenheimer tended to show up for those things. Anyway, the point I was going to make is that Marty Schottenheimer stopped coaching for good in 2006. The last time that he won a playoff game was in January of 1994 against the Houston Oilers at the Astrodome. And the Houston Oilers quarterback was Warren Moon, and their defensive coordinator was Buddy Ryan. Okay, that shit might as well come on a reel-to-reel that when it start playing, you start hearing pop, 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 pop. Like that's how far back it seemed. But even the Chargers didn't really fire him because they just got tired of being pretty good. That's not exactly what happened under those circumstances. I've seen some comparisons to Andy Reid being let go of with the Eagles, which is the idea that you have a good coach and you know you have a good coach, but now it's time for that good coach to go away. The reason that it was clear that it was time for that particular good coach to go away was in the year 2012, the Eagles went 4-12. They missed the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. They went 8-8, and then they went 4-12. Okay, it was 4 straight years without a playoff win. Now, as I have discussed on this show, and we have discussed a few other times, the Steelers have not won a playoff game since Obama was the president. The Steelers have not had a very good team, I would argue, since January 2017. The question that you have to ask yourself about the Steelers, if you're going to say Mike Tomlin needs to go or whether or not Mike Tomlin needs to go, is what is the reason that they have not been better, okay? Now, if you wanted to make an argument that you needed to cut ties with Mike Tomlin because they were good but not good enough and maybe changing coaches would have done something, this wasn't it. That time was a few years ago. That time was when the Steelers were getting their asses kicked by the Patriots every single time. Bill Belichick would cook that man. There was no other way to look at it. They could win a bunch of other games, and they could win over a whole bunch of other people, but when the rubber met the road and he ran up against the Patriots, regular season, postseason, didn't matter. He was getting cooked. Now, it does so happen as I look at this, it only happened in the postseason one time. But that, to me, was looking like a clear, and by the way, it was the last year they won a playoff game, 2016. But to me, that was a clear indication that there was a ceiling that they weren't getting over with him, and that ceiling was beating those very good Patriots teams. And it was a fair question to ask whether or not the holdup was the coach, because if you watch those games, they were getting out coached. That was the time to me that if you wanted to ask the question about whether to move on from Mike Tomlin, okay, maybe then was the time that you did it. Now, the question that you ask is, why don't they have a quarterback? That's what you need to ask yourself, because that seems to be the question that has to be solved. And whether or not Mike Tomlin is the coach, that's the thing the Steelers have got to deal with, because they're over there in the conference that has all the quarterbacks. And they have either come out there with a shell of Ben Roethlisberger or some variety of bum ever since. The 2 quarterbacks that they got this year are really famous, but they are 2 quarterbacks that their previous teams literally gave away. They gave those guys away. That's who the Steelers have been out here with, okay? So what are you going to do to fix that? Well, see, that raised the question to me about the Steelers, which is is their kind of inherent conservatism as an organization the thing that gets them in trouble? Like when they made that trade and they gave up picks to get Minkah Fitzpatrick, I went through and looked at the Steelers' draft history, and if you looked at it, I'm sure there were like little changes here and there that came up from time to time, but if you looked at it, for something like 40 years, they had one first-round pick every year. They weren't moving into the first round. They weren't moving out of the first round. The Steelers stayed with their first-round pick. It didn't really matter what they needed. It didn't matter if they needed a quarterback or whatever it is. That is what they did. They did not make big moves. And in order for a team that is consistently pretty good to get themselves a quarterback, you're probably going to either have to really stink for 1 year or you're going to have to make a big move. This team did not make a big move. They drafted Kenny Pickett, for example, right? The year that Lamar Jackson was in the draft, they did not do that. If they're not going to be willing to make a big move to get a quarterback, it doesn't matter who the coach is. Now, what I don't know is how much of that decision-making has to do with the coach, but I know from their track record that they just don't make big moves, generally speaking. That's not what they do. Now, the other argument or the other point I want to make is just something to throw out there when the argument that the standard for the Pittsburgh Steelers is winning championships, and that is simply not true. Okay? If we want to look at the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers in its totality, before the run of the 1970s, right, before the Chuck Noll era, they were one of the worst teams in the NFL. In fact, you might have been able to make an argument that they were the worst team in the NFL. They was out there looking like the old Clippers. You youngsters don't know what that means, but, you know, the old heads know what I'm talking about here. The Steelers had an owner who the Pittsburgh newspaper did a long series. He was a racketeer. That was his real bag. And then after they passed that from him to the next son actually ran a competent football operation. They figured out a couple of market inefficiencies. Largely, they did a lot of scouting at HBCUs and some other stuff that we don't need to talk about right now. But anyway, they had that run where they went to and won 4 Super Bowls in 6 seasons. That was followed up by the entirety of the 1980s that were pretty mediocre. Bill Cowher took over the team in 1992. They went to a Super Bowl in 1995. They didn't go to another Super Bowl until 2005, right? Tomlin gets the job in 2007, goes to Super Bowl in 2008, go to Super Bowl in 2010. But this isn't, they're a team that had a couple of runs by and large. And they've been pretty good at different points. But the idea that this is a franchise that only stands for competing for championships, if that's the case, then Chuck Noll doesn't keep his job from 1980 to 1991, right? Those 3 years where Bill Cowher missed the playoffs. If the standard was that, then Bill Cowher would have gotten fired at that point. That's not what the standard is. The standard for the Steelers is, hey, man, we got a certain way that we're going to do this, and we think that keeping it steady along that pattern is the way to get it done. And that's what they've done. Now, if they decided to change that with Tomlin, okay, you can. I could understand it. But don't misrepresent what the truth is and don't misrepresent what the history is because it sounds like something cool for you to say on television. If the Steelers fans want to be championship contenders and think that Mike Tomlin interferes with that ability, that's fine. That makes perfect sense if they feel that way. Just don't invoke the past to try to make the point. Hell, those 4 Super Bowls we talking about, guys, I'm 44 years old. That all happened before I was born. Every single bit of it happened before I was born. The quarterback for them teams, he been on television for goddamn 35 years. Terry Bradshaw. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to tell y'all, right? People get saying this stuff. They forget about what's actually true. So to kind of wrap this up, what is going to get better by getting Tomlin out of there? Now, sometimes it becomes a case where you got to make change for the sake of change. I think Andy Reid in Pittsburgh, in Philadelphia at the end was an example of that. But again, there was a clear reason to believe that they stopped listening to him, that it stopped landing with him. They had that dream team season in 2011 and then the 2012 thing where they went 4-12. It was fair to say, hey, this thing is falling apart. You're not really at that place with the Steelers. Now, sometimes you can get ambitious with it and try to get out ahead of the dip. But the truth is, Tomlin's demonstrated there probably ain't going to be no dip. What you need is a quarterback. You can't answer any of these questions until you get a quarterback. Because if you go get somebody else, all they going to be like is, damn, can somebody give me a quarterback? Oh, damn, Sean. They fired Mike McCarthy now.
Yeah, he's officially gone. There was a Jordan Schultz, I believe is the reporter's name. He said
Hey,
they
yes.
wanted Belichick, but Belichick had no idea that they were interested and this and that. So it's another mismanagement from Jerry Jones and the Cowboys.
Hey, I ain't gonna lie, man. Mike McCarthy, I would understand if you wanted to pull up on that man.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like there was people trying to holler at you about that job, and they're like, no, you can't talk to him. What are you talking about? Look, if Mike McCarthy want to stay in the parking lot and wait for Jerry Jones, I totally understand, right? I would pay good money to see Jerry Jones try to run away from Mike McCarthy and Mike McCarthy trying to go catch him. I would love to see that, but nah, that was a little messed up if we gonna keep it real. Anyway, it's Rooney Rule season. I'm very curious to see what sort of mockery of the Rooney Rule that Jerry Jones might potentially make of this whole thing. And it actually works out well. I didn't know that Jerry Jones is going to do this right now, so I had not planned him to be the center of this discussion. It is probably more so going to be centered around Bob Kraft, but Jerry Jones is an interesting person to discuss in the context of the Rooney Rule. And every year back in the day, I used to talk about it, and I felt like the crux of me talking about the Rooney Rule was to explain to people not only why it was important, but also why it shouldn't have been that big a deal and why white people need to stop tripping. Just because somebody want to do a little something to help us out every now and then, god damn, right? Why you got to be mad about that? Anyway, all the Rooney Rule is mandating is that somebody get an interview. That's it. It's not that huge. It's not something that a qualified white man cannot overcome in his own quest to get the job. But then what I feel like happened over the course of time is that the prevailing argument stopped being about that part, and then it started to be about the question of whether or not the Rooney Rule did anything. And you were just over here, the Rooney Rule is a joke. The Rooney Rule is a joke, right? And it's not. It's not as effective as it had been previously. But the only reason that you have the level of integration of head coaching that you have currently in the NFL is because of the Rooney Rule. That's it. And for those of you who don't know, the Rooney Rule came around because Johnny Cochran showed up with some documents and said he was going to sue them. And that was back when Johnny Cochran was the scariest black man on earth. Can you imagine if Malcolm X had a law degree? You know what I'm saying? Hey, Johnny Cochran had them thinking that, man, look, I don't even need to get to that part right there. All I'm telling you right now is Johnny Cochran had the white man shooketh. Shooketh, I tell you, shooketh. So shooketh, they're like, fine, we'll give black people interviews. How about that? So anyway, they started doing that, and we saw things change. We have seen ebbs and flows in how this sort of thing goes, and then it kind of gets all the way to the back end where now people are mad. Now, I want to make a point about the NFL that I think is very important. I used to do a TV show for HBO called Game Theory with Bomani Jones. I was drinking tea out of my mug. Anyway, we did something once about all the you know, when that summer when black people was getting stuff. We got the white man a little guilty, George Floyd, 2020, right? And got the NFL to lean in and put this money down to help some causes. And them causes are a little more gangster than people recognized, right? I still think the NFL ain't got no idea that stuff is happening. I almost felt bad about doing it because I felt like I was snitching. They was giving money to somebody that want to get rid of, like, the whole criminal justice system. Like, they don't want nobody to go to jail. And I'm like, you better calm your black ass down. I got a few people I'd love to see in jail right now. But anyway, I bring that up because as everybody plans to get rid of the DEI stuff that had come around, the NFL has said loudly, they're not going to do that. They're going to stick with what they're working with. They still got inspired change on the field. They still got end racism on the hats. They still got it takes all of us. They're doing a little bit more as a league than one would expect. But a place where they have not earned any benefit of the doubt whatsoever is with coach hiring. Now, I do think, and I don't have the exact figures in front of me, forgive me, I didn't get around to putting those together. But if you start looking at the coordinator level, both offensive and defensive, it's different, man. We got more black people doing those jobs than had been done previously. Like, we have to give the league some credit for their progress, because if you don't give people credit for their progress, then they're going to say, what's the point? And then they just quit on it anyway, right? I mean, granted, they'll do that at a whole bunch of different times, but I still think it's very important to say, anecdotally at least, it looks like there's been progress on that front. With head coaching, not as much. But We need to properly identify where the Rooney Rule might go wrong and what it is to skirt the Rooney Rule, to take it seriously, so forth and so on. The New England Patriots hired Mike Vrabel. I saw many people make the point, because they did an interview with Byron Leftwich and they did an interview with Pep Hamilton. Byron Leftwich, former NFL player, former offensive coordinator for the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the year 2020, has been out of the game for a little while. Pep Hamilton, he's a Harbaugh guy. He worked as an NFL offensive coordinator with the Colts, with Andrew Luck early in his career. He was a rising star at one point. Howard University's own Pep Hamilton, by the way. He was a rising star in the coaching ranks at one point, and it never quite turned all the way over. And so the Patriots did themselves no favors, because they sent out a tweet that said, we have interviewed both of them. They had both of them in the tweet, had pictures of each of them to say that they had done that, and it screamed out, boxes have been checked, which was a bad look. Now, let's be clear. They were checking the boxes. They were checking the boxes because they knew who they wanted to hire. They wanted to hire Mike Vrabel. Vrabel had been a successful head coach in the NFL previously, and Mike Vrabel played for the Patriots when they were winning Super Bowls. He is absolutely the guy that Bob Kraft wanted to hire, but before you can make a hire, you have to do these things. It was no different than when you got to post a job, right? And it has to be posted for X amount of days, right? That is checking the box. He did the exact same thing with these two dudes, and that I saw, at least on the internet, seemed to spark a bit of outrage about skirting the Rooney Rule. And I do not think that's what happened at all. I do not think that they skirted the Rooney Rule here at all. In fact, I think what they did was something that was ultimately positive for the two men that they called in to get that job, right? I will also make the note that Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator of the NFL best Detroit Lions, he was asked to interview for the job with the Patriots, and he said no. Now, it's also funny is that Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, who, despite his name being Ben Johnson, is white. He did take the interview, and he did not get the job. Now, do you think that it was a waste of time for Ben Johnson to do that interview? Do you think that there was a disrespect being done to Ben Johnson to do that interview? No, I don't think that's what it was. That dude probably needs some practice at doing these interviews, and he got an opportunity. The Patriots, in exchange, got to try to pick his brain about how to make their own team better without paying for it. It's a great way to get free consulting, by the way, is to do coach interviews. But whatever. But no, Aaron Glenn wasn't going to get that job, and I don't think that they should have called him to get that job, because it is a bit insulting for the Patriots to ask him to come interview for that job, unless they really entertained the possibility that maybe he could come in there and knock their socks off and then get the job. But if they were all the way in on Vrabel, then they just needed to be all the way in on Vrabel. The reason I think they did a favor, I mean, favor is not the right way to put it, but I think they did good things for Leftwich and Pep Hamilton is very simple. When is the last time you heard anybody talk about either one of them? That's the tweet that they put out right there. All right? So let me ask you. When's the last time you heard somebody talk about Byron Leftwich? Did you realize that he just kind of out here in the wilderness? Did you even know who Pep Hamilton is? Did you ever give Pep Hamilton any thought? No. What happens often is these guys get these interviews that maybe they wouldn't have ordinarily got, and people hear about that stuff. The classic example of this, by the way, is a guy we just talked about. Mike Tomlin went through the interview cycle, and the Steelers heard that he was out here wowing people with these interviews. The Miami Dolphins didn't hire Mike Tomlin, by the way, because they thought he was too hip-hop, per Dan Le Batard. Instead, they hired a gentleman named Cam Cameron, who went 1-15 that season. But he had been so good at interviewing, the Steelers found out and gave him the job. He'd had the job for 18 years. And by the way, that wasn't a Rooney Rule interview for the Steelers. They had already interviewed Ron Rivera that year, so they had checked the box. But word got out that Tomlin had laid it down flat. And so then he got to the interview with the Steelers, and then it went from there. You see what I'm saying? Like, it is important that we identify what is good about this rule or the potential that this rule has in being effective. Because if you don't, all you do is wind up sounding like a cynical fool and saying, oh, this doesn't work. Oh, this is a joke. We just need to get rid of it. If they get rid of it, what you think is going to happen? You think they're going to call any of these dudes? Right? You think without this that any of them are going to get these calls? That they're going to have any chance to elevate their names? Is that what you think is going to happen? Hell no, that's not going to be what happens. Okay? So with that, Bob Kraft, who, I mean, I get a little careful trying to give like white people too much credit for different things. You understand where I'm coming from? But isn't he the one that was trying to get Meek Mill dumbass out of jail? He might care more about black people than I do for doing all of that. Right? That was that guy. Now, is it possible that that guy doesn't really care about the spirit of the Rooney Rule? Yeah, it's possible. But what I do know about that guy is that guy, if nothing else, cares a lot about how he looks on these matters. And I look at what he did and said, no, if you know who you want to hire, then that is, in fact, how you should handle it. And I would also make the note, I'm okay with the idea that he knew who he wanted to hire, just like I was okay with it in the year of our Lord 2003. I believe it was 2003. No, 2002. It was the year 2002 when Jim Irsay fired Jim Mora and made it loud and clear that he knew exactly who he wanted to hire and that somebody was Tony Dungy. And he did it, right? Because we have to stop acting like job searches go in a manner that is, I am going to search around the whole world, and when I get finished, I am going to hire the best coach available. You would like to do that, but that's not how it works. In some form or fashion, the list is going to have to be whittled down. Okay. And the way that the list is often whittled down is in something that Jerry Jones said in an interview, and I thought was perfectly okay. He hires people he knows. And that is what most people do when it's time to fill a job. They hire somebody they know. The disadvantage to black people is we don't know as many of the people who do the hiring. And that's why they've tried to do a lot of fixing of the networking game to get people in positions to where people know who they are. But this idea that there's something wrong with knowing who you want to hire and then hiring them misses the point to me about what the fundamental root problem is here, okay? Though I'm not getting mad because the New England Patriots decided to hire Mike Vrabel, who I think is a good coach. You get mad when they get out here hiring these bums, right? When they hire in the Matt Patricias and the Joe Judges, those type of guys, or taking guys who had been bums before and then giving them opportunities to be the head coach again. That's where you have the problem, right? It's the sorry retreads, not the good ones. Like if the Patriots were saying they were going to hire Andy Reid in that time that the Chiefs hired Andy Reid, that's not going to be the time that I'm going to argue about, well, how come you ain't hiring no brother? No, not this one. This is not the time for the fight. And with Vrabel and the Patriots, it wasn't the time for the fight. You can make an argument that the firing Gerard Mayo was the time of the fight. I do think there's something to be said for that. But if I'm being honest here, I think what happened is Bob Kraft old as hell. And he ain't got no 5-year plan. And he looked and was like, oh, this is going to take longer than I thought. And so he decided to go somewhere and try to get something that he thinks might go a little bit faster. I don't think that is a sign of systemic racism in that case. I think that Mayo got caught in something that happens to a lot of people, but I think it's a lot of white men that would have been out there with that same exact situation, same exact job, and he would have gone out there and got Mike Vrabel because he thinks that's the show shot. He thinks the show shot is right there, and he can bring him in. But please understand that for the best way the Rooney Rule works is not going to be we would not have interviewed him if they had not made us. And now we gonna give him the job. No. It is to allow cats to either introduce or reintroduce themselves to the people in charge, and then that probably will lead to them getting jobs. Not directly, but that's the best chance you have for such a thing happening. Okay. Get right what this is designed to do. And then I'm telling you, you'll spend a lot less time being mad at stuff that probably shouldn't be the thing that makes you mad. And more than anything, it'll give you a better way to truly track and measure what the progress is that we're talking about with these coaches and what's going on in the game, right? It makes for a more fruitful discussion. But in the end, even if you don't agree with my explanations for what these rules are good for, take some time yourself to ask, well, how can this work? Why would this work? What are the ways that this can go? Because I don't know if you've been looking around the world, guys, but they try to shut down everything that's in the name of decency and the right thing. They doing that all over the place. So when you get out here and say that this right here is a joke, you won't be laughing at what comes after. The NBA is in full swing and the NFL playoffs have begun, which means you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite teams only on Prize Picks. You can make a Prize Picks lineup between the NFL and the NBA in as little as 60 seconds. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. But rather than hearing it from me, let's hear from our expert picker. Sean, how the picks been going for you?
You know, Bo, I'm expert in losing at the moment because this month has not been the best for my picks. But with the NBA heating up and the NFL playoffs starting, I can make picks between both leagues. And with the flex play, I can still cash out if my lineup isn't perfect. But as always, make sure you stick around for the end of each show to hear my upcoming picks. And if you know me, I am always going to be picking more.
So you make sure you go to prizepicks.com/Bomani and use code Bomani for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/Bomani. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
We know you can't be on top of all the news and information of the day. No need for the social media feeds. We got you. Now, if you haven't heard.
All right, Bo, here's our first one.
Hi, I'm Rob Price and I'm a reporter with Business Insider, and I just wrote a story about the gambling industry's quiet embrace of artificial intelligence. Casinos and gambling sites are enthusiastically using a mix of generative AI and more traditional machine learning to spruce up their operations, doing everything from writing reviews of sports matches that encourage folks to gamble, to automatically generating odds for microbets, from optimizing the layout of brick-and-mortar casino floors to profiling online gamblers. And the ambitions don't stop there. Industry analysts are dreaming of a future where every game can be minutely personalized to the individual player, giving them a constant stream of hyper-engaging, personalized content that ultimately encourages them to gamble more money more often and for longer. AI industry luminaries like OpenAI's founder Sam Altman talk about how AI might one day achieve sentience, transform our society, and build a post-scarcity economy. But the gambling industry's adoption of the tech shows how today AI is often being used for much more mercenary aims.
Nothing terrifying about that, Sean.
No, it's like, I already thought, as someone who does sports gambling casually, I already thought Vegas was good, but now they have AI and everything's going to be manipulated a little bit more. Not great.
Man, that may grow sentient part. Don't let that.
That was
look,
wild.
There's values in, like, I've got ways that I use artificial intelligence that I think are useful and worth sharing with people and stuff like that. But I mean, way down the line, boy, this is gonna get to a bad place. Now, I want to say right fast, those of you watching on video, you may have seen some of the faces I was making while that man was talking. That wasn't about you, Rob Price. I apologize. It was this. This is from Sham Sharania. Leangelo Ball has signed a deal with Def Jam and Universal Music Group. A representative from his label, Born to Ball Music Group, says. Sources said the deal is worth as much as $13 million.
Insane.
With $8 million guaranteed, and gives Ball full ownership of music and his own record label. And somebody has to do it. I had to be the one to say that Jamie Foxx's sad-ass special wasn't funny and wasn't good. That song is not good, Sean. That song sound like he did it on a Nokia phone.
Yeah, I think
and y'all are really trying to act like this the Heat.
I think the song is strictly like nostalgia. Like, it reminds me of a time when people did record like that and the songs were like that. But yeah, it's ultimately not the good song.
That song is, what's so wild though is, I went and listened to it on Tidal. To be fair to Leangelo here, I listened to it on Tidal, and I was like, "Oh, this is cheeks." Like, I can't, and I guess I don't have the nostalgic view of that sort of that time period. But I heard that, and I was like, "Cheeks, I tell you, cheeks." But then the next song was something called Nine Ball, and it kind of jammed. Like, it sounded like it was actually produced well, all of these things. But that other song right there, if that's what made them give him $8 million, shit, man, give me 15, 20 minutes. I'll give you a demo tape.
Also, that
What are you
8
talking
million.
about?
That guy's gonna be locked into that record deal for an eternity. You know, like, oh, full
Yo.
control. We're giving you your own. That is a death sentence.
And look, man, people were like, see, LeVar was right. And I'm like, kinda. He was, this is not an indicator of the rightness of LeVar Ball. That's all somebody talking about hater Bo is right on time. What you call it? This ain't being no hater. People always think because when I'm telling you the truth, I'm a hater. Sean, it's kind of like when I said that Yacht Rock is just giving white people credit for trying. And people was out here saying like I was hating. No, I expect more from white people. All I'm saying is they can do better than that, right? I'm getting behind them and saying you ain't got to be like that. I listen to jazz now. White folks be killing it over there in jazz. You know what I'm saying? Come on, man. Don't do no impression. Come with the real. And Leangelo sound like an impression or something.
And the Yacht Rock thing, I was a bit offended by that take. I was like, man, Bo really is a hater. And then, as you know, a month and a half later, I listened to the Aretha cover of What a Fool Believes, and I was like, yeah, he was right.
That's all I'm saying, right? All I'm saying is, it's kind of like, you ever listen to Living Color, the band? Okay. If Corey Glover, the lead singer for Living Color, was white, we would call him one of the great rock singers of all time. We would talk about him like we talk about Steve Perry, like Freddie Mercury, like those sorts of dudes. But it's normal for black people to be singing like that in the eyes of the whites, so they don't even think about it in that way. You see, if it was a bunch of black people making that dry ass shit y'all out here talking about, y'all wouldn't call it yacht rock. You know what you would call it? Some bullshit. That's what y'all would call it. Y'all would call it mid. That is what you would call it. And yacht rock, the only music that is known and defined by being definitionally mid. And if it's not mid, you don't call it yacht rock, you call it Hall & Oates. You call it Simply Red. You call it what it is. But by definition, if it ain't mid, it ain't yacht rock. That was my point.
That's a good mic drop moment.
Same thing for you, Leangelo Ball. That ain't even, that's Reggie. Now that right there, that beat is Reggie. But nine ball was jamming. You can't call me no hater. 9 Ball was jamming.
I know we did our hip hop.
Aggregate this, hold on, right fast. When you aggregate this, remember to say I said 9 Ball was jamming.
When we did our hip hop series, I think we should do a version of a watch along, listen along when Leangelo drops the album. I think that's your immediate reaction to the Leangelo Ball record. I think that would do real good for the content.
By the way, somebody here says Bo will not have me reconsidering my taste in music. Has anybody ever told you that Babyface is the most overrated songwriter in the history of songwriting? Yeah, that's right. I was at the grocery store the other day and they played my favorite example of this. The Whispers Rocksteady. I wonder how long it took Babyface to come up with We Begin to Rock. Steady rocking all night long. You think he stayed up all night long doing that? Like, what do you think the rough draft of it was? What do you think? Huh? I'm all here for trying to get you to reevaluate your musical taste, because you could be better than what you are. And when you are, they'll like it more when you play music.
Thoughts on this comment from Charles Menifee? Drake is the yacht rock of rap.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Like Drake, it feels like with Drake's just more disappointing because he's capable of so much more. It just feels a little bit more sinister.
All right, let's move on. Here's our next clip.
My name is Kate Lindsay. I'm an internet culture writer, and I wrote a piece for GQ titled, "TikTok Stars Are Less Worried About a Ban Than You Might Think." In the piece, I spoke to 8 different New York-based TikTokers about the uncertainty surrounding TikTok's future in the U.S. Surprisingly, they're not that worried about it. This isn't to say they don't have a lot to lose if TikTok goes away, but that it's almost become the boy who cried wolf. The first time that then President Donald Trump first floated the idea of a ban or forcing a sale of TikTok from its Chinese parent company was back in the summer of 2020. And when that happened, all of these TikTokers rushed to TikTok, telling people to go find them on Instagram or YouTube. They were really panicking. And then it didn't happen. And this series of events has kind of played out multiple times over the past 4 years. TikTok's future has been endlessly debated, but ultimately nothing ever happens. So most of the TikTokers I spoke to just don't believe it is. That being said, they have also learned a lot in these past 4 years, which is to diversify their platforms and income streams. So TikTok might have been their primary platform back in 2020, but most successful creators now also stake their claim across things like podcasts, web series, books, music. So if one fails, including TikTok, they're just going to shift focus elsewhere.
Hey, Sean, are you able to kick people out of the YouTube room?
Yeah, I totally can. Why?
All right, it's a dude named David Batiste from Baytown, Texas, and he referred to Drake as this generation's Al Green. Let's get him out.
I just put him in a 10-minute timeout. I think that's hopefully he comes back reformed a little bit.
Or maybe he doesn't, right? In fact, I'd kind of prefer. I mean, like, talk to Lance. This is the thing. You know, I hadn't really thought about this. We're gonna have to start. I can start enforcing some quality control in here. Okay, cool. Shout out to all my Evening Jones people. Y'all know what time it's about to be. You know what I'm saying? We about to woohoo get the suckers up out the pay. Anyway, we were just talking about TikTok. Do you do the TikTok? Do you like post or like transmit or receive?
I'm on it a bunch, as in like I'll just scroll. I post here and there, but not much. So like if it goes away, sure, that's fine. I'll have more time back on my hands. But yeah, with these creators, like, you know, you'd be smart to, like the author was saying, like diversify your bonds a little bit.
Well played. I do not do it in a coat. I do not do it in a boat. I do not do it with a goat. I'm not. Hell no. Look, man, every bit of research that we have indicates that these social media apps are bad for us. They are terrible for us. And then here we go getting on something that is designed to make you addicted to it. Keep doing it. Smart people can't let it go. I refuse. Absolutely 100% refuse. But just because I refuse, that does not mean that the right time TikTok channel isn't exactly what you need in your life.
It definitely is, and shout out to Andrew on publishing posts to TikToks.
Yeah. And I just want to throw it out here right fast. How many people both sell and use heroin? That's right. You know what I'm saying? I mean, y'all might be thinking I'm being hypocritical. Well, I'm just being a businessman.
I'd like to move on. We don't have a third if you haven't heard clip, but if you haven't heard, wildfires spread throughout the greater Los Angeles area, and I wanted to spend just a couple seconds shedding light on some helpful resources. I know a lot of the Right Time audience may not be living in Los Angeles and may not be aware, but if you check in the YouTube descriptions, I'm putting a bunch of links of ways you can donate and support and, you know, help the cause. A lot of families have obviously lost homes, a lot of local communities, especially in Altadena. For those who aren't familiar, Altadena was California's first middle-class Black community. Altadena thrived as a rare refuge exempt from redlining, offering Black families a chance to acquire land, build homes, and create generational wealth amid systemic oppression. And during the Great Migration, the area became a sanctuary for Black Americans fleeing the Jim Crow South. And, you know, that was one of the biggest areas that got kind of displaced. A lot of Black families lost homes. And, you know, while the attention is on the Palisades and Malibu and other kind of affluent communities, you know, there are a lot of Black families in Altadena and Pasadena who have lost so much. And so I put a Google Doc of ways you can provide to GoFundMes that of families who've lost homes. There's a link to Baby to Baby LA, which is providing support to families with young children. You could donate to them at the link in the description. Their biggest needs are obvious: diapers and large sizes, and it's a good way to just donate to the community. Milan Fire and Wind Resources is a really good, helpful tool. If you are in the area, you can see that spreadsheet and find ways to get involved yourself, whether it's helping remove debris, helping sort donations at the Rose Bowl and all these various locations. But above all else, LAFD Wildfire Emergency Funding is a link. There are firefighters who have been working tirelessly. And for those who aren't aware, a lot of these firefighters are incarcerated workers who are making $5 an hour fighting fires, protecting homes, protecting people. And there's really good ways to donate there. And there's a bunch of links in the YouTube description. I hope that in the midst of, you know, what you guys are dealing with, and if you are like some of the lucky ones like us here in office, you know, there's ways to help, there's ways to volunteer, there's ways to donate to help the people who weren't so lucky. So spending that time in this section to just shed light on that.
And I want to thank Sean for doing that. He put in the work on all of this and put all of that together. I didn't even know what he was going to read. I learned a great deal in the course of that. So credit to you. And I think an important point on this from LA, and I don't know like exactly how much attention people have paid or how they've done it, but it's like an invasion from every flank. It looked like so much of the discussion about the Palisades fires, obviously, but when I looked at that time, it was three of them, and then the Hollywood fire popped up. So I think that people I don't know how many people outside of this recognize that there are distinct fires that are affecting different parts of the city. And this is a time where the face of this for a lot of people have been very affluent people, but there's a lot of regular people that's catching hell right now, man.
Yeah, the Palisades fire was the big one, but Eaton Canyon fires is what obviously displaced a lot of families in Altadena and Pasadena. And that was nearing kind of my area and my wife's family's area. And so that became a little bit real. But to Bo's point, the Hollywood fires kind of happened overnight. It happened within 20 minutes. It was probably the most scared I think my community was. And, again, like Bo said, the faces are getting politicized. You see Karen Bass up there. People are shitting on her for her inability to make things right. Gavin Newsom's out here doing political campaigns, but there are real people who are doing really great work and trying to help out local communities, and your money could be used to support a lot of people on the ground. And I've seen a lot of my friends taking time out of their days to volunteer. So, in the midst of this being a really, tough situation for a lot of families, it has been really nice to see how much the community has stepped up and how much of real people in Los Angeles have stepped up. And hope you guys can do the same for wherever you're listening.
Yeah, and Lance, because I know you're listening, can you call our friends that could figure out a way that we could do something with the people that we work with to also assist this cause? Sorry, folks, sometimes you just got to talk to people while you're thinking about something, you know what I mean? But no, very good on you. And yeah, this is a crazy time and scene and everything else. And so again, I thank you so much for really I think there's a humanity to it that can be lost when you're not talking to somebody who knows. Like I've talked to you, and you've got people around you that have been affected, and just folks having to get up and leave. And even if you're coming back, man, it's smoke in the air everywhere else. Like this is a thing, man. This is a really, really big thing.
Yeah, everyone I know knows at least one or two people who have lost a home. And so, I think, talk to people, reach out. The winds are supposed to get bad again this week. So I think everyone should stay vigilant. And I would urge everyone to wear a mask, even if the air quality seems fine. There's a lot of ash and stuff in there. So just, stay vigilant and support where you can.
All right.
Time for voicemails. Bo, I asked Bo this before I brought up the LA fires thing because the prompt on Friday.
Here we go. Bo said it was okay. He gonna put it on me. Okay.
No, but the prompt was, the stories of when the brokest you might have been in your life. And obviously a lot of the audience sent in really great submissions. And, I know they're not broke now. These are just stories that we could all relate to. And a lot of them are funny,
It was a little bit of a bad break. You know what I'm saying? The way it all came together in terms of producing the show. However, I don't think that we can afford to miss out on this lighthearted brokenness because there's other brokenness.
Yeah, I know exactly. A lot of the audience in chat, I know you guys aren't broke, but let's revel in some stories of times in the past. We've all been broke before.
Yes. I would also tell you, pro tip, just go through and do it. It goes better when you just do it. Maybe somebody thinks about it, maybe they don't.
All right, here we go.
Whoa. Calling in about the brokest thing I've ever done. Karen, Vegas. Southern University grad, so this is from the 90s. Me and my roommates and I were broke one night. So we decided we were going to order as many pizzas as we could order. Roto. A bum check for it. But we had enough tip money for the driver to take the check. So that all went through. We had felt bad about it. A year later, after I graduated, I called that Domino's and talked to the regional. I begged him to take this money, that I had this on my mind, that I felt so guilty that we did that to get by. But they told me, thanks for calling in. I'm glad you enjoyed that pizza. We wrote that off. get that off their conscience. But that was the brokest thing we ever did. We had to because we were starving. That's right. On the yard at Southern back in the day. Thanks.
Sean, how familiar are you with Southern University?
I'm not, and I saw you made a face. So I'm curious why.
Like you're familiar with the Bayou Classic? Southern
Sure.
plays against
Yes.
Grambling?
Yep.
They play in the same conference. I don't know what it sounded like in your headphones, but I didn't know that was a Southern alum if he hadn't told me. Am I the only person that was?
Yeah, the voice. The voice did sound
okay.
off.
Okay, just checking.
From
just
the
checking.
location
also,
in the school, you know.
I would also tell you that exact same Domino's. My brother has a story involving him and his homeboy Fro Daddy. And if my brother were not on a flight right now, I would somehow find a way to have him call in and tell the Fro Daddy story. I will have to tell it because I don't have it here, but it is a very similarly oriented story about being broke and they wanted to get some pizza. And they cooked up a plan because it was at the time, I don't know if y'all kids know about the matching coupon game, but Domino's apparently was matching anybody's coupon. And so they went around the room and collected the money everybody had, and they had $6. And Fro Daddy called up Domino's and said, yes, I have a coupon for 3 medium pizzas and a 2-liter of drink for $5.99. And so apparently that was a little too good to be true for the folks at Domino's. And so they sent a directive to the delivery driver, hey, you need to get that coupon. And so Buddy pulls up at the door to get the coupon, and obviously there is no coupon. And so they try to negotiate what to do. And so the delivery man says, all right, well, I need to call the home office, right? So he gets on the phone and he calls the home office, and then Fro Daddy's like, well, let me talk to him. So Fro Daddy gets the phone, he's talking, he's like, okay, yeah. So I got this, I don't have it, but okay. All right. So you need me to write it down. Okay. Do I sign it? Nothing. Oh, all right then. Hung up the phone, wrote it down on a piece of paper, 3 medium pizzas, 2-liter of drink, $5.99, gave him some money, and it was a little bit over, and it was like maybe 50 cents over, and then told Buddy, the rest is for you. And so Buddy left, and they were like, wow. And Fro Daddy goes, hey, man, we need to go eat this at your house. That man been hung up the phone. So after the delivery dude leave, they pack up the boxes, they get in somebody's car, they pull out, and they say when they head out, the route leads them where the car is dead up with the Domino's, and they say little Buddy handed the coupon, the quote unquote coupon, over to the manager, and he's just handing it over with his head down, and the manager just looking at him with his head cocked and his hands on his hips like, that was a very broke thing. Let us continue.
What's the brokest thing I've ever had to do? I didn't get paid till Friday, and I was broke, ran out of money on Monday, and I had to hop the subway every day to get to work. Funny thing about it, I was a security guard in a security uniform, hopping over the transit area every single day, pushing people through so I can hurry and go through them when they pay for their fare. And then I remember one time a BART employee said, I told him, like, hey, I ain't got money for this to get out. They was like, well, you got to pay. And I was like, I ain't got money for it. They looked at me, hopped right over it. Police didn't say nothing. Yep. Corday from the Bay.
Hey, Corday from the Bay, that's a pretty funny story. But for any of you youngsters out here listening, just to be clear, y'all ever seen Fruitvale Station?
Yeah, I was gonna say that could get bad, especially because he said BART. That's the same location as the movie.
Yeah, that's right. You ever seen Fruitvale Station? You know what I'm saying? Oh. Anyway, let us continue.
Yo, Bomani, Sean, what up, though? This is Ashir, living in LA now, probably about 12 years now. But when I first got here, I was taking care of my mom financially, and it didn't start out too hot, and so we weren't doing too well. And so I remember we used to check the I guess the rags for deals on groceries every week, and there was this Mexican supermarket called El Super or El Superior or Superior, one of them ones. And every week on Wednesdays they had deals for produce. And so, we check it every week. See, sometimes they had 3 pounds for $1 for bananas, and one week they had 9 pounds for $1 on watermelon. And I don't know if you keep track of those prices, but boy, that was a lick. So, not wanting to spend money on gas or anything, we both grabbed suitcases, walked about 2 miles to the supermarket, filled both of them suckers up, probably got about a good 10 plus watermelon, and probably spent less than, and I no joke, we probably spent less than $10 on all of that. But, and then we dragged them back and just ate watermelon for over a month. And look, man, we had to do what we had to do. But, thanks, Bo. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate y'all. Sean, stay safe amongst these fires. All right. Peace.
What you needed to do was wholesale retail the watermelons.
Sell them.
You was buying them at retail.
Back.
You needed to cut them up, be outside your crib with them slices, because somebody gonna pay. Somebody gonna want some of that watermelon. You could have turned into the watermelon man. You had to connect.
Also, to like, I don't think most watermelon won't last a month. So I don't know what kind of watermelon he was eating for that long.
You had to plug. You could have employed some people, maybe from other countries, to be walking around selling that watermelon, do it like they do in Central Park, where they put a little spice on it. Sandia. That's how you say it in Spanish, sandia. They got the sandia and the spice on it. You could have been out there getting that paper. Instead, you was out here blacking it up. I can say that, and Sean, yeah, you can laugh, Sean, it's cool. Like, he wasn't really blacking it up because everybody loves watermelon, but at the same time, I can't imagine if it was a non-black person looking at you pulling up with suitcases to stuff watermelon into. They probably thought you had 15 kids at the crib. Wow, what a time. Sean, you got prize picks for the people?
I sure do. Monday Night Football, Rams, Vikings, Sam Darnold versus Matt Stafford. Let's take Kyron Williams, more than 0.5 rush touchdowns. Matthew Stafford, 1.5 pass touchdowns. I'll take more there. Aaron Jones, 60.5 rush yards. I will take more. And Jordan Addison, 4.5 receptions. I will take more. That game being played in Arizona after being moved, given the fires. But excited for a good game. We'll see if Sam Darnold continues to do what he does.
Sam Darnold, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on The Right Time. We do this here 3 times a week. That's Sean Yu. He handles everything behind the scenes. Thank you, sir. Also, thank you to our If You Haven't Heard contributors. Thanks to Rob Price of Insider. Check out his story on coding and AI in Las Vegas. Thanks to Kate Lindsay of GQ, freelance writer at GQ. But check out her story about TikTok stars not worrying about the ban as you might think at GQ.com. Remember, follow The Right Time. Subscribe, like, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars. I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. And we'll talk to you guys in a couple of days. Take it easy.